these kinds of things are accessible to us all the time if we stay grounded, we stay open to receiving, and we stay rooted. And that living like that, and it doesn't mean you have to cut like everybody off. It just means if you're here and you're so strong and you are in reciprocity and you're checking in with yourself constantly and you're coming home to yourself every day through meditation, through breath work, through what is my body actually feeling? How do I feel about this information that I'm intaking? How do I feel about the way someone's treating me, talking to me? When you are in that space, you might get tugged over here, but guess what? When it tugs, you're going to be like, whoa, I am not available for that because this is my priority. And then when this tugs, it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have space for that right now because I can feel that that's pulling on me. Let me ground in a little bit more and then check back with you tomorrow. I might actually have space for you then. That's where you really get to serve.
Welcome my guest, Adrian Ellison. She's a creator, a coach, and a truth seeker. The truth is bold, and she believes that we're all meant to be bold in our own unique way. She is the founder of the Alpha Project, leading conscious retreats and self-healing and empowering workshops. Adrian's work is profound in helping individuals heal their shadows, find authentic confidence, and experience radical self-expression. Through her various methodologies of coaching, she works with individuals through an array of unconventional methods of healing, such as alternative medicine, holistic psychology, and the world of energetics. All right. Well, Adrian Ellison, I'm so honored to have you on. This is going to be so fun and juicy. I just know it. And so I've been following you for some time and I'm glad it worked out. I reached out to you and here we are. So
here we are. I'm so excited to dive in with you.
Thank you. Well, I know this episode is going to be so needed for so many people. And I feel that so many people will find themselves in your story in some way or another, at least be able to pull out little things you mentioned about how we could actually heal ourselves from whatever, whether it be a small amount of trauma or big trauma, whatever we've been through. I think you could really speak to this space. So this will be juicy and deep and fun and maybe painful for some, but it's needed. I know that. So yeah, let's get into the trenches, right?
Do it. I'm already in it. Let's go.
Well, okay. Before we get into the trenches, I, of course, always like to start with somebody's story. So what brought you to this purpose that you now serve today, helping others self-heal in the relationships? What is some of your story that kind of brought you here?
Yeah, there's so many components that lead you. I mean, I really truly believe we're all here to do the same thing. People are always asking, like, as soon as I find my purpose, or like, how did you find your purpose? And I really believe from the bottom of my heart that our purpose is just our ever evolving truth and our ability to honor our truth so much as it evolves and as it shifts, that we come into a state of just full honoring of ourselves, which really brings resonance for other people. The storytelling aspect that people share, like when I share my story, we're not really listening for like, what is this person's story? We're listening for, oh, that's familiar to me. I really resonate with that. Oh man, like I've never heard somebody speak like that. And that makes me feel safe to have the experience that I've been having, or, not feel so crazy or chaotic, whatever that is. I lived in chaos my whole life. Most of our personalities are developed before the age of 5. And I have an interesting story, as everyone does, complicated. I was adopted. And so coming from my family, I had obviously generational trauma. 1 in 3 women are saying that they have had sexual abuse in their life, but we know that it's more than that. So whether you're someone who's experienced that or not, there's a good chance that your mother or your grandmother or even your father or your grandfather experienced that. And so understanding that information is continuously passed down to us for our survival. And then when we are born into this world, we have our own traumas that we experience that get kind of layered on top of that, all the stories, the beliefs, the shame. And having that in my life really didn't have much information about where I came from, other than, hey, like your mother, your biological mother, my mom always told me that she loved you so much that she knew she could not provide for you the way that you deserve to be provided for. And so she surrendered her rights for us to be able to take care of you. And I thought that was so beautiful. But no matter how beautiful it is that I had two people who did not have, they weren't supposed to take care of me necessarily. Like it wasn't in their plans. And yet they were able to open their hearts to that. That's really beautiful. But it doesn't change the fact that as an infant, being born through one body with one continuous heartbeat for 9 months, I was then handed off to strangers. Yeah. It smelled different. It felt different from a vibrational standpoint. Like all of the things that we get from our parents, the bacteria that we're around, every part of being connected to another person's body, literally grown inside of another person's womb space. And then, hello, here are your new parents. I never had any idea that that had an impact on me. So from early on, I had a pretty stable home. I had what everybody, a lot of people say like, oh, I had a really great childhood. I don't think I really have any trauma. And that was me for a very long time. Yet as a child, I was very disruptive. I was aggressive. I was just destructive, like all around. And it was really hard to keep me entertained on things. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I had a very strong personality as a female, I had a very feminine personality, but because that did not feel safe to me, and I was not able to see that sense of safety in the feminine through my mother, and probably felt through my biological mother, I then projected very masculine in the outside world. It was like, this is the way that it is. That came off, very loud. So from an early age, I recognized like, I don't feel like I am like other women. And I even remember praying to God, like, please just make me nicer, more quiet. Like I'm 6 foot tall, so I have a very big body, and I was very tall from an early age. And yeah, I was always kind of one of the boys. I felt safer with boys. I definitely felt safer with my dad. And my relationship with my dad really shaped a lot of my relationship with the masculine, with money, with everything that I know to be like as survival. So really my root chakra is very rooted in that relationship with my father, which my dad was incredible. He was my best friend, but he had PTSD. His parents, their inability to be present and to show up and to speak their truth and to really listen to him in his moments, that was completely non-existent. And so whatever he carried into fatherhood, the pendulum usually swings. If you don't want to be like your parents, you'll typically do the opposite, which doesn't necessarily bring healing. Sometimes it just brings the opposite, right? It's like it skips a generation. And my dad really wanted to be a safe place, and he didn't want there to be the abuse that he had suffered. He didn't want me to feel unloved the way that he had felt that. So I had a father who had absolutely no boundaries, did not know how to say no. My mom was pretty, compliant with that. She would put her foot down, but it didn't really last. And so I grew up with very little boundaries. And even when there were boundaries laid, I did not respect them. And so as a child, it was very difficult for me to hear the word no. And the way that I would process that is, well, it's just a no right now. And we don't have this like conscious understanding as a child. It wasn't like I was like, oh, okay, no right now means I just need to figure out a way to manipulate them into getting me a yes in the future. And so I will continue to move my energy in a way that gets me the yes that I want. You don't have that intellectual understanding. Right. And I feel like I've always been pretty emotionally intelligent. I have spent a lot of time thinking thoughts and really daydreaming. I remember even early on as a kid, like my parents would be, both of them really worked through their anxiety by just never slowing down, never stopping, never sitting down. Both my parents go all the time. And for me, that was always a lot of energy. And I would process that by just kind of like shutting down and getting really heavy or becoming very destructive in the chaos. And because my relationship with my father was pretty chaotic, meaning that he had a lot of chaos in his life. And the way that I connected with him was through chaos. I came to know love as, you're in chaos, you're crumbling. If I step in and fix it for you, I will receive the love and validation and have my needs met. Or you will lose your shit, which will make me lose my shit, and then you will come rescue me. So from an early age, that is pretty much how I got my needs met, was through conflict and through chaos and through destruction. And one of the things that I'll just pinpoint, because I'm sure we'll go over this, is that your shadows and the way that you move your energy from the darkness is always going to be some beautiful, magical transmutation process into the light. Like all of the ways in which I fought through the chaos, as I transmute that and as I really alchemize my pain points, that becomes my strengths on the light side. And as a light worker, now I'm able to really hold space for chaos in a way that was not held space for me as a child, right? And so I grew up in a town with 300 people. It was a German Catholic community, all white. I grew up around a lot of racism. I grew up around a lot of alcoholism and just a lot of people not saying what they meant. And I've been very, very intuitive from an early age, and being able to feel truth, but truth never being spoken or acted upon, that also created a lot of chaos inside of my space. And I feel like a lot of people resonate with that. Like, we're all these intuitive, energetic beings, sensing everything around us and then trying to translate it to something that actually makes sense for us. And in the process of that, again, being very destructive, I craved culture. Like, I literally used to watch BET when my parents weren't home because we had satellite. You had nothing else to do. It was like, how many times can you ride your bike across town, which takes 20 minutes to do the whole thing? How many times can you jump on the trampoline and run around outside? And my parents, the teachers, nobody knew how to stimulate me. And that is also something that I feel like a lot of people can resonate with, because the way our public education system is set up, it is not for stimulation. It's kind of for this moving from point A to point Z with information that you may or may not even feel passionate. Yeah, it's like, parallelograms and math and all of these things. And I was very creative as a child. And when you don't have a healthy outlet for creativity, it's going to go somewhere. And so I started partying. I started drinking alcohol and doing drugs by the time I was 13, 14, sneaking out of houses. I was boy crazy I feel like from the moment that I just woke up and realized, like, oh, there's a difference between us. And like, I really want to be with the guys. I want them to like me. I want them to validate me. And oh, by the way that I'm going to get validated by them is to create conflict with them and then, let it stir. And I didn't have that relationship with my mom. My mom would shut down in conflict and in chaos. And so when me and my dad would have our huge combustions, you could find her kind of just staying away from it. And then for several days, it would take her to process that. She didn't have processing mechanisms back then. Nobody was talking about like alternative healing or like, hey, like all those emotions that you're feeling, they do need to move and they need to be expressed. It's like, no, you just hold them down and you just sit in it and project it on everybody else and look for other people to rescue you. And so the way that I interpreted the feminine was that I was just way too much for it. I was a burden. It was never going to understand me. And so that was my relationship with girls and women. And then through the partying stage, man, I really just got myself into a lot of trouble. I put myself into positions where there was so much chaos so that I could either fix it or feel like, somebody was going to fix me. That cycle led to a lot of things like, sexual trauma early on, drug use, being around energy that was very fragmented and broken and heavy. And eventually, I caused enough trouble that I wasn't necessarily kicked out of school, but it was very much like, hey, like, your daughter is very disruptive and she's not really accepted here. You guys should really think about moving schools. Well, the closest school was 90 miles away that was suitable for me to go to. And so my whole family, it really fractured my family because my dad owned a business where we lived. My mom picked up, bought another house. This was right before the crash in like 2007, 2008. So my parents owned two houses, stretched very thin. I was going to a new school. I had never been accepted where I was. And I remember the first day touring my school and the senior boys walking down the hallway and like whispering about me. And like, I could feel their energy of curiosity towards me. And I had never felt that before. And so this began the journey of just like, I just want attention as much as I can get it. I know that I can get it through conflict. So I fought people in high school. I did more drugs, more drinking, that whole situation. I was in and out of like clubs and bars by the age of 15. And I was just a fucking menace. I was a menace. And it was really hard on my family. And I felt the weight of that as well. So a lot of shame came with that, of just, not even being able to sit and look and take ownership. Because again, nobody's talking about like, oh, if you take ownership, you're going to get your power back. And when you feel empowered, then you're going to make empowered decisions. That language was non-existent in my life. Right. And so it very much was just this constant searching. I had a high school sweetheart for 4 years who was absolutely my best friend. I didn't know any better. I created so much conflict with him. And, you know, he was the person that kind of got me through. And then when I got into, you know, kind of the college years, I went to college for all of 9 hours total and dropped out. It was not for me. I was even less stimulated in a college setting than I was in a high school setting. It was just way too many people. They weren't interested in like, hey, like how stimulated and passionate are you about this subject? It was like intake this information and then sit down and take tests on it and don't have any application in the real world. Don't have any way to be like, how do I take this, all this information I'm using and like see a metric system to see like how I'm growing in life. And I feel like we're so driven for that. We're so driven for growth and metrics and being able to have that reflection of ourselves. And so I ended up going to hair school, dropping out of that as well. And then my parents just were like, listen, this whole thing that you're doing, this dance of I'm in, I'm out, not committing to anything, feeling like, again, having no boundaries. And my parents kind of allowed me just to do whatever I wanted. And anytime I was in trouble, they would get me out of trouble. So my whole first years of my 20s was like, who's going to rescue me? Which led me to get into relationships with men who wanted to rescue me because they were unable to rescue their mothers or their mothers were unable to rescue them. And that's when I started really seeing the trauma bonds that I was creating. Didn't have the language for it then either. And it wasn't until my dad passed away at 23, which was about 6 years ago, that it shook me so hard because when I talk about like my root chakra and, you know, that relationship with my dad, he was my relationship to the masculine and to this third dimensional plane, everything that is survival, money, support, safety, you know, all of that. And it was gone in an instant. And it shifted everything. Like the doctor bills were so high. My mom's like, I can't afford, you know, this lifestyle of you getting a DWI and me having to get you out of jail and this, you know, all this stuff that's going on. Like, I can't do it anymore. And that was honestly one of the most life-changing experiences for me because it shined a light on how much I was completely unable to take care of myself and where I was reaching for other people to fill in the gaps for me. And about a year and a half after my dad died, I met this guy named Tommy, who is still one of my best friends. And we ended up dating for 3 years. I was in such a funk when we met, like such a depression, that I just moved to Utah 2 months after meeting him and was like, oh, I'll move in with you. Like, you can take care of me. You can support me. And he had been very familiar with that from doing that with his exes and trying to receive the validation that his mothers were never able to give him. And so that was, I always say, like, that was my fucking schooling. Like, there is no college education that I could have gotten that would have taught me and reflected to me about my own self and about a partner and what it looks like to do that dance between the masculine and the feminine, as well as just doing the dance with another human in general. And he was so kind to me in all of my chaos and destruction. Like, he was born and bred in that. And for him, it's all he knew. So it was normal to him. And instead of, you know, these other relationships that I'd had where it was like, I create conflict to feel loved and validated, and people are like, peace out, I'm not available for that. He was like, oh, this is so familiar to me. Like, I'll just keep doing this with you. And he was very avoidant. So it was like I was chasing conflict and he was just trying to get away from it as fast as he could. And in that time, like, he was so kind that no matter where I went in a destructive phase, although he didn't know how to hold space, he really did the fucking best he could. And he was the safe place that I was able to really, really experience myself out in the world. And he would reflect things back to me and say, like, hey, like, the person that you say that you are, it doesn't add up to how you actually show up. Like, your words don't meet your actions. I read the 4 agreements because he was like, you know, we have a business. You need to understand these principles. Start listening to podcasts, start doing this. And it was always, you know, I was doing that to feel worthy of being with him, to feel like I was contributing something to the relationship, because at the beginning he paid all my bills, he took care of me. And then there came this point where he left and went for a Tony Robbins event. He was like very big into Tony. It didn't never really resonate with me. I was more interested in energetic topics and things that were not so like, you just got to fucking wake up at 5 a.m. and you do it and you do it and you do it. And that just didn't hit home with me. And so that also was the reflection of my dad, just like doing it and watching that break down his body and him not really be able to be present for his family as much as he wanted to be. And so I had a lot of resistance towards it. So I had this strong mirror showing me like, this person cares about you and they're reflecting things to you that are not your truth. And it's your opportunity to speak up about that truth and to own it, no matter if that person is validating you or not. And even if they're the only fucking person validating you at this point. So I found myself at 26 years old with no friends. This is 3 years ago, literally no friends. I had like one girlfriend. We worked all the time. I thought that I wanted to be the CEO of this company that we were building. And I wanted to, have this label and do all these things. And it didn't matter what I strove for, what I did. I would just find myself in such deep self-sabotage and depression and really toxic thoughts, and then projecting those on other people. At one point, we hired this girl who was a spitting image of me. And it was my first time getting to experience myself.
Wow. That's
outside of myself.
Wow.
And it was hard. It was really hard to see how she affected me and my nervous system. And then, oh my God, that's me to other people. And the difference between us was that I had an environment that supported destruction, rebuild. And she didn't necessarily have that like I did. And so eventually she fizzled out, and I was able to really say, okay, moving forward, like, I think I have a choice about how I want to be. I'm going to stop saying like, well, this is just how I am. This is just my personality. Like, take it or leave it. Either love me or hate me. Like, these were the things that were my mantras to make me feel better about people not wanting to be close to me and be in my space or leaving me, and it's so interesting because our shadows really do drive and create so much of our reality when so does our light. But if we have not really stepped into our light, we don't even know what that looks like. Everything will be manifested for us regardless. And so for me, what was really being manifested was like, I don't like who I am. And that's really hard to cope with. And I can change some of these things. And if I can't, at least I'm going to try. So that was where I really started listening to more of like self-improvement podcasts. And I would kind of sift through them. I would start books and I would read like the first third of it. And I'd be like, I kind of get it. Like, I get the whole point of it. I don't need to read the rest of it. And still a lot of it didn't resonate with me. And I think what I was looking for more than anything else, because I had so much information, I was running a nutrition business. I was seeing, 20 to 40 clients every single week. I was helping them transform their entire lives. I had all this information about nutrition. I had some of the most incredible transformations. Like, these are things I'd go to companies and speak in front of 200 people, show them the before and afters, get all these clients. And mind you, my clients were all Mormon since I was in Salt Lake City, Utah. So here I was really interested in energy, completely broken away from my Christian upbringing. And at this point, I was so angry at God that my defense was, I don't even believe in you. I don't even believe in a higher power. So I went through this like weird season of atheism, which I wasn't, because I was still kind of praying in weird ways. And also, having this relationship with God that was like, took my dad from me, like, you owe me, just like really deep in victimhood. And what I would see, reflected in like, I have all this information, I have this business, is I still had an eating disorder. I was binge eating all the time. My clients, I would take somebody and help them lose 140 pounds. They would look the best that they've ever looked in their life. And it would not change any of their trauma. They would just misplace and take how they were coping with food, and they would put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm like reading all these self-help books. I'm seeing my own patterns. And through the process of it, I remember very clearly one night, I'm just sitting there binge eating. And as I'm eating in the pantry, like, I wouldn't even go sit down on the couch, because it was like, I was like trying to like stop myself. And I'm like, I'm just going to like one more bite or whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like staring at my partner, who had a really hard time being present because of just our dynamic, his traumas. And what I realized in that moment that I was craving so bad, that the hunger was actually being manifested as, is I was starving for connection. And I would say to him, like, just connect with me. And he would be like, we're together all the time. What else do you want from me, Adrian? And I didn't have the language. I was like, I don't know, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like I'm cared for and loved, even though you do all these things that show that you care and love me. I don't feel connection with you. I don't feel reciprocity with you. And that's what led me to join my first mastermind group, which just changed the whole game for me. I went from having no friends to a community of over 100 people, meeting the soulmates of my life. And at the time, I had a really poor, again, relationship with women. I still had this belief, like, they don't understand me. They're not going to get me. Even if they do become my friend, like, I'm going to become toxic at some point and they're going to be like, I'm not available for this. I'm out. And so when I joined my mastermind, it was me and a group of like 5 or 6 guys. And these guys took me in. And what was so great is I had set a boundary with myself, which was probably the first boundary I'd ever set, which was that knowing how codependent I was not going to form any kind of a relationship with a man except for a platonic one. And I still had my partner at the time, but we had a lot of dysfunctions. And so I thought that what would heal those dysfunctions was opening my relationship. And the reason I thought that was because I was listening to Aubrey Marcus' podcast. I was listening to mostly just curiosity, things about psychedelics. Never even really dabbled or heard about that at all. You know, I'd done my whole drug use thing, but that was mostly alcohol and things like cocaine and cannabis, and not even using them intentionally either, right? Like cannabis at all. And when I'm listening to these podcasts and the way that he's talking about psychedelics and open relationship is like, these are resources for self-exploration. And I just got really curious. I was listening and I was like, oh, maybe open relationship will make me feel more connected to my partner, even though our foundation is very, very faulty. And so in that mastermind, I decided, no men, I'm going to be in this open relationship, but every relationship I have here is platonic, which took me slipping into codependency with another person and finding safety with another person and having to force myself to find safety within myself through like a social experience. And it was very uncomfortable. I feel like I'm a social butterfly, but the people that were attracted to this mastermind, they just wanted my truth. And so when I would show up and I would share about my story, I could feel when I was not fully in truth. And truth is such an interesting concept because it's not really about saying, your truth in the sense of like, well, this is true for me. Like, my name is Adrian and I'm 29 years old and I live in Austin and I love it. It's actually more about the undercurrent and the intention for why you're even sharing. Why do I feel compelled to share with you about who I am in the way that I'm sharing it? Mm-hmm. That's what really resonates more as truth. And so the community aspect just healed so much of me. And it made me not need that external validation from social media that wasn't even real. Like, who was even following me at the time? Wasn't connecting with those people. And my partner, like, I had a truth that he thought was my truth. And I kept that truth because I thought that, well, he likes me for this truth. And then I went over here with these people and they were like, we don't even know you. So whatever your truth is like fine with us. We're just here to find ourselves. And so that process really taught me so much about what the world really wants from me, which, is really just my truth, or some people have an agenda and I can learn about that as well. But it was really the polarity of that that brought me home to myself. And shortly after that, I was like, I need to heal this relationship with women. I'm only hanging out with the dudes every time we're going on trips together. And I decided I'm going to host a women's retreat, even though I have no female friends. And I decided when we're going to go to Sedona for our meetup that 7 days before that, I would offer a house for women. And if they wanted to stay in the house with me, I was going to teach a little bit about what I was learning in books and really just offer a space for us to all connect. And I went into it very honest, like, hey, I have a really poor relationship with the feminine. I don't even really know what that means. I just keep reading about it. And if you have a space like that and you feel resonant with it, like, feel free to join me. And I ended up with a full house of women. 16 women came and attended. I threw a party. Airbnb was not happy, but it was so incredible. It was so much fun. And I connected with these women. And one of the things that impacted me so much was one of the darkest shadows that I had was my history with sex and sexual abuse and not feeling safe at all to have a sexual expression, which is your creativity. So here my root chakra was shut down from my dad dying and me not feeling safe in the world. And now my sacral chakra is shut down. And I had a ton of autoimmune symptoms that started showing up all in the lower region, all in my sex organs around this time. And so as I'm fighting for my health and fighting for connection and fighting for, like something greater than myself, that was really where I felt like my universe opened. And it was like, okay, you want to explore? It's unlimited exploration. There's so much more. And that year brought so much awareness to me. And over the course of that year, I hosted a couple more experiences. I wasn't making any money. It was just like, I want to do this. I want to get out of nutrition. I want to be able to not feel like I'm living a split life when I'm sitting there trying to tell, my clients that are Mormon, like, hey, I did a mushroom trip last weekend and I met God, and like, it's a very different God than what I thought it was, or what you think it is, or, you know, any of those things. And God is very specific to each person. So at the time I was just like, I am experiencing so many things and all I want to do is talk about them, because I
You were
feel
going such a different path.
yeah, and I'm like
Yeah.
on fire for the first time in my life, like truly stimulated. And when you're stimulated, like you want the whole world to know about it. So that feeling that I had a split life allowed me to start making plans. I was like, I want to get out of nutrition. I was honest with my partner. Like, I don't think that our relationship is serving us. I would love to move into a friendship if that's possible. And one of the greatest like hero's journeys that I ever took was coming home from a meetup with my mastermind, knowing that the reason I wasn't breaking up with my partner was because I loved him. And then I realized, like, I got clear, like, I'm all about like definition. When you say like, well, the reason I'm doing something is because of this word, I love this person. If you don't, if the word love is super ambiguous to you, it's not going to hit home. Like, we need specifics for how we're moving our energy. So for me, I defined like, what does it mean to love someone? And at that time, I was coming across a lot of information that was all about setting someone free. If you really love them, they'll come back to you. If you really love them, you don't need anything from them. So that fractured this belief I had that I couldn't leave him because I loved him, because I came to realize that if I truly loved him and I knew that I was not right for him and that he was not right for me, that the truth of what love would be to set him free. And I was fucking terrified because he was my lifeline to survival. He wasn't paying for my things anymore, because I had asked him earlier in the year, I need you to stop paying for my things. I have to learn to survive on my own.
Yeah, that's great.
But my name wasn't on the lease. I didn't have a car. I didn't have, you know, an understanding of how to take care of myself or pay bills, or, you know, hey, when you run up a credit card, guess what? You have to pay it off. I mean, this is how little of the law of cause and effect I learned as a child, because anytime I messed up, my parents took care of it for me. Anytime that they said, no, you know, here, we're taking your phone away, we're grounding you. You know, it was like 24 hours before I convinced them to give it all back to me. So here I have to heal that relationship with the world and with science and with energy, that when you do something, there will be a cause on an effect on the other end of that, right? So that journey led me to my nomadic journey, where I, you know, at the beginning of my nomadic journey, it was like, I don't know if I can afford to live anywhere. I'm terrified to sign a lease. I want to travel the world. I'm not really making any money, so I'm just going to couch surf and like do the nomadic thing for a little while. So I did that. I traveled all over. I ended up going to Bali, which the point of like this part is that you can go into your self-exploration so fucking blind, but if you do have faith, you're going to find everything that you're looking for. I showed up to Bali without even telling my banks about my trip. My credit cards were completely shut down. And then they told me, we for some reason, we're closed to China and to Indonesia, so you don't have any money. So I get there. I have a 16-hour layover in the Xiamen airport, which is in China, which is like, I don't even know if I'm allowed to go out in China. I don't know the rules of China. I've never gone anywhere by myself. Luckily, I had a girlfriend there who was from Australia, and we had met in the mastermind. Her name is Sarah. She actually lives across the street from me now. It's incredible. But she has an entire history. She wrote a book about finance for millennials. She really understands money and building businesses, and she has a remote business. And so she's like, hey, like, clearly you have some money things. And it was money and sex were the two dark things that I was not going to talk about with anyone. And she could tell, she's like, you know, the way that you talk about money is like super avoidant and very ambiguous, and like, oh, it's just like, I don't even, and it came down to the fact of like, I don't really understand money. How does it come to me? Like, I know I have to work, but my story about money is that I have to physically break my back like my dad did to make money. And then if the farmers don't get rain, money still might not be there anyways. So, you know, having that story about money and it being so ambiguous, that was going to control my life. There's so much of that shadow that was creating my reality, where I didn't feel like money was accessible to me. Like, I knew there was a lot of it out there. I see other people with it, yet I don't know how to be in relation with it. And everything in life, in energy, like energy is always in motion. That's the laws of physics. So we're always either in a state of reciprocity with energy, or we're in a state of blockage with energy. And so where I felt blocked, I started looking, and again, I didn't have this language. So it's not like I I was sitting there like, okay, I know I need to get in reciprocity with spirit and the universe. And like, this is what it looks like. I was just like, oh, it's sticky. And it's like, I don't know, the way it feels in my body is every time I think about money, I go, how am I going to survive? And then anytime that I made money, I wouldn't even want to look at my bank account. I would be like, I don't know how fast it's going. And I remember feeling terrified to look at my bank account. And so I had a session where, this is like a session I say with my friend Sarah, where we were just hanging out, talking. And she said, you need to define what your money is with story, or your story is with money. And you need to be in truth about it. At the time I was dating 2 guys, I called both of them and was like, hey, I just need to get this off my chest. I have a really bad relationship with money. And sometimes I let you pay for things and I go to the bathroom because I'm so uncomfortable. And like, I just kind of like, it's not like I'm intentionally trying to take your money. I just don't feel like I can survive on my own. And that's a huge part of why I'm with you.
Oh, wow.
And
Truth.
both of them were like, yeah, I know you're terrible with money. I know what your bank account looks like. Like the way you spend money is absolutely ridiculous. And the way you talk about money, like that's why I pay for a lot of your stuff, because I know you don't really know what you're doing. And I'm like, wait a second.
You found me out.
I'm broke. I don't even know how to make money. And you still like me? And that shattered a belief that I had from childhood, that what made people want to be around me, like in order to compensate for how intense my personality was to have all the nicest things. And I looked back at my childhood and I thought, oh my God, my parents had the coolest house. I had a red go-kart. I had a go-kart track around my house. I had no rules. I had the nicest bikes, the nicest scooters, the nicest doll houses. And when I was 21 years old, I bought a $90,000 car that I could not afford. And I told my dad, I have to have this car. Just looking back, just so that I could drop my friends off at the club and they wouldn't want to ride with anybody else. Mm-hmm. And all of these things, they're so far away from who I was and wanted to be. I just wanted to be loved and travel the world and go on adventures and be wowed and feel in awe of everything around me and like connect with nature and like explore. So why am I still holding on to these things? And so in Bali, I got super, super, super clear. And by the way, this was a year ago in October.
Just a year. Wow. Okay. I'm going to interrupt you soon, by the way. I'm going to ask you some questions.
That's okay. Yeah. And the story, the part of that is from that time, I started shifting things. And from October to the next October, I hit 6 figures in my first year of business and started hosting retreats and collaborating with some of the most incredible mentors that I was inspired to collaborate with. I healed so much of my journey. And then because 2020 hit and I owned a retreat business that was for travel and no one could travel, I started a mastermind. I took everything that I had learned in my journey. I put it into a curriculum and then I offered it to the world. And the resonance and the frequency of that attracted over 60 people that felt very aligned to not only join me and listen to my story and my philosophy, but to pay full price to do so. And I've just been continuing to build ever since.
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your journey, because I feel that, again, I think that anybody listening could pull out something that they relate to, any hardships they've been through, any beliefs that they've attached themselves to. What is also so remarkable, you have so much self-awareness. And I know that at the time when you were going through all this, you didn't really know the word or the full understanding of it, but it seemed like you were always curious to understand it. And it's crazy that this was only per se a year ago that you really got into fully embodied who you are now, which is to help others heal and develop these healthy relationships and whatnot. So just to unpack all that, let's see. Well, so you mentioned so many things, but if I were to pull out one thing to start with, boundaries. And I think that is one of the foundational pillars of healing, is creating healthy boundaries. So how did you start to notice that boundaries was something that you needed to implement into your life? Because I know you said like only a few years ago, you like established one of your first boundaries, which is remarkable.
Yeah. I felt that one, I couldn't hear no. And that was very clear because I would hear that from other people all the time. Adrian, I've already told you no, and you just keep coming back. And now I just feel like you're manipulating me. So that was a hard mirror. And the other thing was that what I would do is when I started being like, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm not going to let you treat me like this. I would say that, but then I would let them treat me like that. And so I started being confused. Like, well, I set a boundary. but now I'm not following through. How do I get to a place where I actually feel safe to say, this is my boundary, and if you do not follow it, I won't be available for this. The way to do that, and what I teach my community, is that boundaries are not to keep you separate from another person. They are to keep you close to yourself.
Oh, I love
so that when you are in relation with another person, you can let them know what you are and are not available for. And you can be able to feel safe in knowing that if they left, you never abandoned yourself. And a lot of that comes from healing our abandonment wounds, feeling enough self-worth and respect, and being close to ourselves and coming home to ourselves every day, so that when somebody else says, I can't honor you, you say, that's okay, I honor myself. And
that's beautiful.
Getting to that is very hard. It's one of the things that I did a podcast with my friend Caleb Campbell last week, and in the middle of all of this, he stopped me and he said, like, I just want to acknowledge you don't get to a place of saying that without a lot of pain. And I feel that for everyone so much, that we want to honor ourselves. We know what our needs are. We're terrified to ask for them, because if we do ask for them, either we're not going to stand for it, and so we're going to abandon ourselves whenever it doesn't happen, or we don't even believe that people will honor us when we make them, when we set that boundary. We don't feel lovable unless we compromise ourselves. And so that's been so much of my journey, is like, how much more am I going to compromise myself to make other people happy? And where that showed up the most was during a meditation, where I kind of went into this fear of like, what if there's nothing after death? And to make it really short, I ended up feeling alone and in the darkness for hours. And I projected all my memories up onto the ceiling. And I remember looking at all my memories, and there was a few that were so fucking juicy. Like, I was so present, and like I was showing up in reciprocity. Again, I didn't have the language. And I was like, I could live off these memories forever. And there was only a few of those memories. All of the rest of them were me doing shit that I did not want to do, that did not stimulate me, that did not make me excited to rewatch it. And I just thought, oh my God, if I die and there is nothing after this but myself and my memories, I will live the rest of my life creating memories that are so juicy that when I have to relive them because there is nothing else, I can relive them forever. And I don't believe that that's what happens after death at all. But that moment and that meditation changed my life forever. And like, that's what I do now. I want to feel it all as I'm living.
I love that. And going into, well, again, the whole self-awareness and really getting like fine tuning what are our patterns and what are our triggers, I think is really important. And I think trigger is kind of a buzzword, if you want to say right now. How do we start to uncover these triggers and really get to the root cause of these patterns that we keep on repeating over and over? And how do we start to break that pattern? This goes into the self-healing aspect.
Yeah, I think the first thing, because we are such physical beings, and especially if people don't speak the language of like emotions and energy very well, is starting to pay attention to how everything reacts with your nervous system. And a lot of that is sitting in stillness, being alone, and taking a step back anytime that you do feel stimulated in any kind of way. So if you're with somebody and you're having, you're hanging out with a partner or a friend, and all of a sudden you start feeling anxious, a lot of times what people do is they just try to move that energy away from them as fast as possible. So they start coping, they start using substances, they maybe they leave, whatever that is. That's an opportunity to just go to the bathroom and feel what it feels like to ground in and not run from that energy, but to become familiar with it. It's your nervous system, and energy is just an extension of that nervous system. Like, our feelers are out there all the time, and it's bringing information in. Chinese medicine talks about that with meridians. And as the information moves towards us, now our central nervous system starts to interpret that information and starts to say, hey, you're not safe because of this one time that this happened. That's what PTSD is, right? So there's a spectrum of how we process information and stimulation, and how we define, like, is this a trigger or not? Anything that stimulates you is a trigger, and trigger doesn't have to be a good, or it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can also be a positive experience, like excitement. But for someone who doesn't have a relationship with their nervous system, they don't really know the difference between excitement and anxiety. They feel very same from a stimulation standpoint. And so pulling back into your safety zone, pulling back into your center and into your body will allow you to sit and be like, oh man, I do not feel good right now. Or, oh, okay, I'm feeling a lot of stimulation. Like, am I anxious? Like, what would I be anxious over? And giving yourself fucking space to reconnect with your breath. Like, this is, like everybody's talking about this, reconnect with your breath. But what the point of that is that if you can feel your breath moving through you, if you can feel your own heartbeat, you're closer to your center than when you're so far out in the chaos and the thoughts that are up here. It's, very heady. You don't really know what's going on in your body. And I think that happens a lot of times when we're like, say we're traveling and we feel fine and we're stimulated. And then we get home, we lay down in our bed and we're like, oh my God, my body hurts. Your body was hurting before. You just weren't home. Nobody was there to like feel into it. And so pulling back into the safety of your body, centering yourself, and moving from that center. And every time you lose your center, taking the space that you need. That's what the boundary is for. It's not saying like, hey, I need you to leave because you're doing something wrong. Hey, for whatever reason, I've lost my center. I don't know where I am at. And I need you to leave so that I can come home to myself. And then we'll reconnect as soon as I feel, that stability within my own core.
And do you feel that when somebody, let's say in a relationship or somebody close to you, that you should voice what you are being triggered by and what that stems from? Do you think you should be that vulnerable, or should you process those triggers first?
I think that you're not going to do it perfectly. And that comes down to a game of discernment, which I do think takes a certain level of self-mastery. Discernment is very different from judgment. And when you're in a state of constantly being triggered and not having language, you should do the best that you know how to do. You cannot do it wrong, because coming home to yourself, there's nothing wrong with whatever you feel in that moment that you need to do that. However, over time, and I just say that because to be in a state of like reciprocity with spirit and to be able to feel like, oh, I'm not available for this. And like, I'm coming home to myself and like, I need a little bit of space. And like, here's some context for why. It doesn't work like that. Like when you're triggered, you're fucking triggered. And it's like, get out, you can always have redos, and people who are looking to be in a state of grace with themselves will be in a state of grace with you. People who don't know how to be in grace with themselves, they wouldn't know how to be in grace with you anyway. And so I do think context is really important. And an example would be if you and your partner are in a heated argument and you guys are yelling, you both know you're not speaking from love, and nothing that happens in that conversation is going to bring you back together. So if I know, like, I'm feeling extremely triggered right now, there's nothing that I can say that's nice. I need to remove myself. I need to go in the other room, take some deep breaths, and we can reset and come back to this. That provides context for like, I'm taking care of myself so that I can come back to you. Whereas if I just leave and storm off into the other room and I go in there and I do my 6 deep breaths, when I come back outside, now my partner is really triggered because I've triggered their abandonment, or, like, you always leave the conversation. And context can help buffer and help you understand. And then over time, you will adopt a level of discernment for who is and who is not safe to receive you. And that's why your boundaries are not for other people, because if people can't receive you, it doesn't matter what boundary you have with them. You need to have the boundary with yourself that says, I'm not available to not be received. You have to receive me. They don't have to do anything, and they probably won't. So you say that, and then they don't receive you, and then you compromise. And then you have less credibility with yourself. You feel shitty. You feel energy leaks happening all over you. You feel drained. And then you're searching for validation to get your power back, versus like, everything out. I'm going to come home to myself right now, recenter. I'm not available for you to not be able to receive me. So I'm going to come back to myself and receive myself if I truly want something from you. If it's permission, validation, soothing, receptivity, I will first and foremost give that to myself. If I have not given that to myself, I will have a boundary that I will not ask for it from you. And that is where my boundaries originally started.
And that goes back to, you were mentioning the 4 agreements, being impeccable with your word. If you set a boundary, you need to actually like stick to it. I mean, then you're not accountable with your words. And that's really important. And actually moving into talking about words, I have heard you speak about the importance of our language, and the language we use and how it's received all goes back to our own personal experience. So speaking on language, what would you say about that and the importance of it?
Yeah. Well, there's so much science that I'll just plant to, because this conversation is very energetic. And for people who don't resonate with that, just know that everything I'm talking about is science. So water, there's a lot of research you can do on the memory of water, and water has a memory of frequency. So it can remember the actual frequency of something. There's a lot of science on this. So, do that research if you want to try to ground into this concept. So if everything is frequency, when I use a word, the frequency of that word is what will ring true in the field around me. But there are things that shift into stored frequency, like projections and beliefs that have been passed down. So if you took a word that's very pure, it's never been used before, and you just hear it for the frequency that it is, you can hold that. But if you have a word like God or sex or money, words that have so much energy around them, you can't even get to the pure frequency of the word in and of itself, because you have all these other frequencies that have been adopted around it and that you've put on it and that other people have put on it. And our healing journey is to clean that shit off so that we can come and we can meet something in its pure form and then choose how we want to engage with it. So for me, finding language that doesn't bring me all the muck from my childhood, while being able to simultaneously do the work to look at the muck and go, this is where that came from. Like, this word, I believe, means this because of this story and this memory that I have from childhood. And that memory created a frequency inside of me. So if my dad felt scarcity, every time I heard the word money, I would feel his field shift into scarcity. So now when I hear the word money, it changes my frequency state. If I know and I can pinpoint back to this was this story that is not mine, which means that that's not actually what this means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my frequency around the word money. You can do Joe Dispenza meditations. You can really write and journal, free journal about like what a word means to you. You can reprogram a whole sentence, look at how you see something and then reprogram it and say, this is my new mantra. And you can say that mantra over and over and over again until eventually you adopt it and you hold that frequency. But that's the important part for me with language, is providing my community with very direct language. I mean what I say. And when I say it, I'm very wordy. And like, I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of that comes from the fact that if I say one sentence, one person is going to hear it through the resonance that they have adopted over time, and another person is going to hear it in a different way. So the more language that I can provide about one concept that I'm delivering, the more language and verbiage people have to pick from and be like, oh, I liked this word, but not this word, and this word, and not this word. And that's really where we find our own internal language for any given thing and how we find resonance. And so it's kind of like a song that just hits fucking right. The lyrics of the song and the tonality and like everything about the voice and the melody. There's songs like that can literally change your frequency state.
So true.
Like that. Goosebumps. You feel safe. You feel completely out of the experience that you were just in. It can shift you in that way. And that is language, because language is frequency. It's just sound. So one of the things I try to do when I'm speaking is to be very aware of the frequency in which I'm speaking from. If I just came home from traveling and me and my partner are not seeing eye to eye and I'm in a kind of a rough space, when I get on the phone with my community and I'm doing calls, or if I'm hosting a retreat, my language will hold that frequency and people will feel it. And just like law of attraction, it will call out that frequency in others. And so what I do is I'm always grounding before I'm doing those calls. I'm checking in with like the state of my own body. Do I feel excited? Do I feel abundant? Do I feel joy? Do I feel peace? Do I feel love? No? Okay, well, where are these energy lines coming from? Where am I leaking energy out into the world around me? And a part of doing that is how you get your power back. You start to understand where you're leaking your energy away from, where you're looking for somebody to validate your experience or to make you feel better about something. And instead, you go back to like meeting your own need. And then when the world meets your need, because it will reflect that back to you, now it's like, thank you so much for receiving me. I didn't actually need you to receive me because I received myself, but it does feel so nice to be received by you.
Yeah. And I think another way to connect when you're feeling off on that energy and you need to get into that space, like you were talking about, is that breath work, is recentering yourself with the breath. I think that really works wonders, at least in my world.
Absolutely.
And so you talked about your relationship and how that kind of mirrored things you never really recognized in yourself. So can you talk about this mirror work and how you could hold the space in a relationship to, obviously grow individually and grow together? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say people provide many different types of mirrors. And one can be, when we see another woman, really dressed up, looking absolutely beautiful. She's really taken the time to put herself together. And I'm in the grocery store with like 4-day-old dirty hair, and I haven't showered that day. And I look at her and I'm just like, something about her, I'm just like, ugh, like I'm so put off by that. That could possibly be reflecting to me, not that I'm uglier than her, but that I did not take the time in the day to put effort into myself and raise my vibration. And so my vibration with no effort up against her vibration of I'm putting effort into myself, I can feel that frequency shift and that difference. And mine's lower and hers is higher. And if I have a tendency to judge myself, but I can't cope with how much I judge myself, it's a layered cake. So that's when I say, like, when you feel triggered or stimulated, a lot of times it's this one little current here and it's like so much energy around it. And I can actually feel that in my field. I can feel when something's really thick and really saucy. And I actually joke about like being lost in the sauce. That's what I mean by that, is how do we clear all of that stuff off and get down to the point of like, damn, seeing that woman, like really, in my perception, really putting a lot of effort into herself. That's something that I can't even remember the last time I've done that. And wow, that might be why I've been feeling like my partner doesn't want me, and then projecting on him that he doesn't want me, or that he's cheating, or that he wants someone else. At the end of the day, it's just reflecting to me like, hey, do you even want yourself? Because if you don't even want to put any effort into yourself, you don't want yourself, because look how much effort you're putting into your partner. So that's one reflection. Mm-hmm. Another reflection can be of like a shadow aspect that we're not even aware of, or that we have experienced in ourselves and we feel very disgusted by. So for me, still like a trigger that I have a lot of times is, whenever I see other people with money issues. So if I'm selling a retreat and somebody is like they start free, like there was one time where I hosted this event and I was like, I really want to serve my community by hosting this event. And she was like, well, if you're serving people, why are you charging money for it? And I was I was so triggered. I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe she would say that. She doesn't even know the effort I put into this. Like, there's rest. And I was in this whole experience. And at the end of the day, what that was reflecting to me is, hey, you don't feel very grounded in your own value. You know that you need to make money in order for there to be reciprocity, and everything in life, clean energy exchanges, is about reciprocity. You don't have that grounding language. Language really helps us ground. You don't feel safe in saying, hey, I put a lot of effort into this. And in addition to the effort I put into it, I really feel like the value is worth this. So I stand very grounded in saying, I'm going to offer something beautiful to the world. And what I would ask of you is for you to be in reciprocation with me. And if you are not available for that, or if it doesn't feel like the value is worth it, it's okay for you not to come. But what happens when we're in scarcity? I need anybody who will take it, anybody who will come, right? So then you start compromising, and they can feel how faulty and how like shaky you are in that space. And so that can be another thing that's being reflected to you, is something that is still very triggering for you, that you might not, you need to just like spend a little bit more time sitting in and understanding and getting to the point of, why do you not feel safe to offer this? And then when somebody doesn't get it, be like, oh yeah, they just don't get it. Like, that's okay. That person's not for me. And a lot of times that's going to come down to scarcity. And then a mirror that my ex-partner, Tommy, really provided for me was holding a mirror up when I would not be impeccable with my word. When I, was taking things personal. Like, hey, mirror work can be great with a partner when I'm saying something, and I do this with my partner right now all the time. I will say something, and then whatever his answer will be, I'll be like, I don't even fucking think he heard anything that I just said. And instead of being like, you're not hearing me, I just will say, okay, time out. I want to say what I said. I know I already said it, but I want to say it again, slower. And what would be really important for me is if you could just reflect back to me what you heard. Because if he's triggered, and I say, like this happened with my ex-partner, there was a day where he said to me, I just feel so alone. Like, you're traveling and doing all of this stuff, and I honestly just feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. What I heard is, you don't do shit around here. You're not putting in the effort, and I'm doing it all by myself, and you're mooching off of me. You want to know why I heard that? Because some of those things were true, and I was terrified to be seen as that person. I was terrified to be perceived that way. And also, I didn't know how to do any better. I was miserable. I really was doing my best, yet I knew that it wasn't good enough. And so when I was like, how can you say that? Like, I completely dismissed his experience. And instead of being able to say, oh, wow, I hear that you feel so alone and you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And even if you're wrong, even if I don't resonate with that at all, it must be so hard to feel that way. What can I, like, how can I support you? How can I support you without leaving my center is the most important question I ask myself on a daily basis as a facilitator, as a space holder for community, as a partner and a lover. And it will be the most important thing I do as a mother and as a parent as well, is what can I do to support you that does not take me away from my center or enable you to continue giving your power away.
It's so important. That's a great thing to bring up for sure. And so that's interesting that you mentioned your way you interpreted what he said. So if that be the case, when that happens, like any example you gave, if we interpret it a certain way, does that mean that's specifically what we need to work on?
I mean, yeah, we're always, like, everything that we're doing.
Everything is work.
Is an interpretation. Everything's an interpretation. So, you know, if I sit there and I interpret whatever somebody says to me as, I'm not good enough. You said I'm not good enough. They did not say that, because nothing is personal. Nobody's really trying to tell you what you are. They're really just, again, it's mirror work. When somebody is projecting on you, they're having an internal experience that they do not feel comfortable sitting with or owning. And so they're trying to hand it off to you. They're giving the power away. That's where you can really pull back into your safety zone when you feel that level of projection, or if somebody says something to you, and then if you lose your temper anytime somebody says something to you, or you immediately are like, oh, I cannot believe that they would say that. Like, how dare them think that about me? People can think whatever they want to about you, and they will. There is nothing like, another example with my ex-partner, Tommy. Like, I'm telling you, I learned so much with this man. And that's why he is one of my pillars in life. I love him so much. Right after we broke up, the biggest thing that I didn't want to happen was for him to perceive me as giving up, abandoning him, throwing in the towel, or for him to be like, wow, I did so fucking much for her and she didn't even appreciate it. I was like, I wanted to avoid that at all costs. So I saw myself compromising in conversation and like, what can I do for you? I'm about to move out. Like, you want me to go to the store and get furniture for you? And like overextending myself in these ways. And then there was one night where we were both very triggered. He was driving me to the airport and he very much felt like I was using him. And that was his real experience. It really was. I did not feel that way. I felt like I was trying to make the transition easier. So I was compromising myself to try to make him feel better about me. And he was compromising to make me feel better about him. And on my drive to the airport, he tells me, you're so ungrateful. You don't appreciate anything I've done for you. You've completely abandoned me and left me to do it all on my own. Wow. And I was just in the car sobbing, like, this is my worst nightmare. And when I got on the plane, it was like, all that shit you did to make him not see you that way, you were just manipulating him because you don't want people to see you how you don't want to see yourself, because you don't even fucking see yourself. You don't see yourself at all. And it was so liberating because I realized there's nothing I could do to change his perception or anyone else's. That's his healing work. How he perceives me and how he perceives the universe, how he perceives the feminine, all of those things are contextual to his traumas early on in life, what he adopted from society and what he adopted from his parents. And there is no amount of compensating or manipulating that I can do to change the deep programming that another person carries with them in their genes. All I can do is be really clear about where I stand, not take anything personal, be impeccable with my word. And when somebody has an experience, hold up a mirror for them. That's not what I said. You didn't hear what I said. And I want to hear you. Let me reflect back to you what I'm hearing you say. And then I would like for you to hear what I have to say. And if that person refuses to do so, that person is not safe for me. I will pull back into my center I will validate myself. I will soothe myself. I will give myself permission. And then I will make decisions on how I continue to engage with that person moving forward based on that information that I have.
Hmm. And so talking about this projection, and I maybe the people listening today have heard the word projection and what that looks like, which you've kind of explained what this is. So how do we deal or respond to somebody when they're projecting onto us? Like, as you just said, to actually, honor ourselves and let them know, like, that's your view. That's how you feel. That's not the truth.
Yeah.
How do you feel that the best way to speak that?
Man, one of the first thing I want to say is, at any point that you lose curiosity and humor ever, you have lost your center. So I'm one of the things I check in with myself the most is, am I in a state of curiosity? And am I in a state of like, that's funny. And when I am in a space with another person, if they're projecting on me, I'm really curious, not about them, but about how it's affecting me, how their energy is being interpreted by me. And I live in a state of humor by, usually I love to like visualize certain things. So when somebody's like projecting on me, I will ground in, I will literally shoot energy through my body down into my feet. And then I will imagine us, especially if we've been fighting, passing a hot potato back and forth. It's like, and then at some point I'm like, okay, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And the next time that they throw the potato, it hits the ground in silence and it rolls to the other side of the room. And we just stare at each other. And what happens in that space is, when you don't catch another person's projection, you really hold space to allow for them to experience themselves and to experience their trauma. And think of it like, if you ever see like a child just screaming their head off, right? You see so many people rush in like, stop that, stop screaming. Or you see like, what's wrong? It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. But what happens is that child is going, if it was okay, I wouldn't be screaming like this. What that child needs is not for you to fix them. It's not for you to shame them. It's for you to stand there until their full fucking experience is completely over with. And then ask them, what do you need? And when you let somebody self-destruct, like lose it, have their full experience, and at the end, you feel like I don't feel any different about you. Like, you were clearly in an experience, and thank you so much for allowing me to experience that. What do you need that I can do to support you that doesn't take me out of my center, or cause you to feel enabled in some way? I'm not responsible for you. And that's what I try to do with people, is I try to and it's so uncomfortable, because anytime somebody's in an experience, talk about mirror work. If you see somebody losing it, self-destructing, impaling, whatever, it's going to bring up your own self-destruction. It's going to call upon that energy and that frequency inside of you. If you can be a master of your own space and transmute that energy and say, I will not engage with this, I will literally just sit here and hold space until it's over, even if that takes days. Because if you have an experience where you are all over the place, chaos, 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 and someone comes in and gets spun up in your chaos, all you feel is shame afterwards and guilt. And, or if somebody then they get, into the chaos as well, or they drag you into their chaos, neither of you really feel safe at the end of it. And the thing that is the most safe is, like, imagine standing in the middle of a storm, screaming at God because you're so furious. And it thunder is going and the lightning's going, and you're just like, fuck you, and you're screaming. And then all of a sudden, when you finally get done screaming, you fall down to the ground on your knees, and then the sun comes out. And the universe is saying, hey, that was really dark. Here's some sun. It changes the way that you feel about who's watching, what's okay and what's not okay. The truth is, you're not wrong. And any experience that you're having emotionally is not wrong. Whether or not it's, you're misinterpreting it, it doesn't change the fact that the energy is the energy, and the energy doesn't lie. And so if we can get away from feeling like our emotions are wrong and pull back when we're in a state of projection, not catch the hot potatoes from other people, then we can stand in the storm and scream it out and be in the chaos. And what happens when we hold that much chaos for ourselves, when the sun comes out, we feel so much credibility with ourselves. so much credibility. I did this whole journey of healing my own endometriosis, and I did it through honestly screaming and crying and laughing and dancing in my home because I was in so much pain and I didn't know what was going to save me. And I had had multiple people try to help me, and nothing that they did helped. Every time they would come to my house, I would just feel guilty for how much pain I was. It was either like, I really want to scream right now and you're in my house and I'm not going to do that. And so now I'm very uncomfortable and I'm not doing the thing and expressing how I need to express. Or I was screaming upstairs and now I'm worried about how it's affecting you. Like, I don't have space for you. Leave my house so that I can be in my own experience and take care of myself. And the day I spent 6 hours just screaming, I had music blasting. I feel like the Amazon delivery guys were like, is everything okay in there? And I just went through a full process of just expressing whatever I needed. And at the end of the day, I honestly felt like I didn't need anybody. I was like, wow. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was just in awe of the way I looked. Like, I was like, you are so beautiful. Like, this is unreal. I felt like I could go into a rainforest by myself, go backpacking by myself. Like, I could go do anything I wanted to, start a business, make $1 million. And that empowerment of pulling your power back and just saying like, I got me, I have everything that I need. That is you not only being the storm, but also being the sun. That is you being the masculine and the feminine. That is you being the wholeness that you are in your one human experience.
Beautiful. I love that. And I think that's so important to mention, talking about enabling. It's really not helping you or somebody else when you enable them, because you have to let somebody process something on their own so they could rise above it. And I think that I went through that whole experience of enabling somebody else. And once I finally let go of that, that's when that person was able to grow and I was able to grow. So it's really important to keep that in mind. I think you mentioned that a few times. So talking about self-sovereignty, which is such a beautiful word. In simple words, what would you say this means? And what are the practices and exercises that we could do to build our own sovereignty?
Yeah. Sovereignty is a really beautiful word. And I don't use it a ton anymore because it's kind of like a newer word that I feel like a lot of people just moving into the spiritual space, the conscious space. It's a big word, and they don't really know what it means. So the word that I use that feels resonant with me is I'm in my center. And in physical terms, you can look at somebody's body language and tell if they are in their center and if they are grounded. And think of, the chakra system moves up and down your spine. How straight your spine is connects you to the heavens and the earth. It allows you to be centered between these 2 points that provide energy and information into the crown chakra, and moves all the way down to provide grounding and safety into the earth. And what's so cool about that is I had a healer once tell me that's what's called living vertically, meaning that you're in a constant reciprocity of transmuting energy that is not serving you, that's moving towards you. By the way, energy can be information, people saying things to you. I don't agree with that. So just let that pass, give it back to the earth. The earth is all about transmutation, literally eating what is rotting. There are mushrooms on this planet that eat radiation. Like, it's fucking cool. And we have that connection to the earth. And at the same time, as we're giving and we're transmuting and we're letting go, we're receiving, we're allowing information to come in. And our chakra system is the communication and energy points that filters this process of reciprocity. When you live horizontally and you're not pillared between these 2 points, that's what looks like an octopus, that there's somebody different pulling every single arm. And it's like, oh, my parents need this from me. And like, somebody needs this from me. And you are never centered. You're never grounded, and anything can hijack you. And so when you have things that are pulling at you, which you always do, and I've done this practice in Amanda Bucci's mastermind, I actually had everybody write themselves in a circle in the middle and draw out arms to everything that pulls them, everything that they need to get validation from, everything that they give their power away from, the things outside of themselves that they believe would make them happier, healthier, better, smarter, more loved, whatever it is. And recognize that what happened in 2020 was that everybody had all of these horizontal pulls happening. And then you tap on a catastrophic pandemic on top of it. And it feels like you're being ripped into a million pieces. and it will surface every fucking thing that is inside of you because it will literally fracture you. And if you live, and this is how I lived all of 2020, I got more grounded in the year of 2020 than I have ever been. And it changed my whole life. My business thrived, my health thrived. I healed my endometriosis. I got into a beautiful sacred union partnership that I've been calling in. Like, I'm having the best sex of my life. These kinds of things are accessible to us all the time if we stay grounded. We stay open to receiving, and we stay rooted. And that living like that, and it doesn't mean you have to cut like everybody off. It just means if you're here and you're so strong and you are in reciprocity and you're checking in with yourself constantly and you're coming home to yourself every day through meditation, through breath work, through what is my body actually feeling? How do I feel about this information that I'm intaking? How do I feel about the way someone's treating me, talking to me? When you are in that space, you might get tugged over here, but guess what? When it tugs, you're going to be like, whoa, I am not available for that because this is my priority. And then when this tugs, it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have space for that right now because I can feel that that's pulling on me. Let me ground in a little bit more and then check back with you tomorrow. I might actually have space for you then. That's where you really get to serve. And that was the mastermind that I joined in 2019, was called Fit for Service. And it was all about how to become of the utmost service. And I had no idea it was going to lead me to boundaries. I never planned on being the boundary girl. And that was what it took for me to truly be able to step up and step into this level of integrity where I can hold space for others, because I really know where I stand. I am pillared. I am living vertically to the best of my ability. And anything that takes me out of that vertical, I can tell because my energy is not clean. I'm having to get it from other sources rather than, from the sun and from the universe and from source. And when I feel like I'm overstimulated and anxious, I know that I'm not in a state of transmutation either. I'm holding things in my field. Why? I come back to that. What do I need to let go of? What do I need to open for? I let go of scarcity. I open for abundance. I let go of judgment. I open for discernment. And really playing the game of duality and being able to understand you can redirect energy at any moment that it does not resonate with you. And when you find that space, everything else that's pulling on you is just a choice, how you engage with it.
Yeah. So to pull out from that, so your healing process, because I, from my understanding, you are on this journey for life, and which I think is so beautiful. And you're obviously so open and vulnerable about it. Again, so beautiful, because I think so many people could relate in that regard and be comfortable to share their story as well and be able to open themselves to deeper healing. So what are your healing paths, if you want to say, what are some of the tools you've learned, especially, actually, I believe you posted it earlier this week. You said in 2020, you decided to go on a healing journey, and you mentioned some of the things you dealt with and healed, which is amazing. And I think that there's been so many blessings in 2020 if we all care to acknowledge it. And, no matter what, we could find blessings in 2020, but some of the healing practices you went towards, what were some of those?
Yeah. So I love thinking of like, how can you find objects or allies that remind you of who you said you were when you were not afraid? Those moments where you just made, you got a raise, you tapped into something like flow state that you'd never experienced before. And you were like, I'm going to do this. And I feel so good about it. That's who you are in truth. When you're passionate and you're driven and you love something and you're doing it because your heart is exploding with joy for it. How can you have things around you constantly to bring you home to that feeling? One of the ways I do this is with a sacred space in my home. I have a meditation room that has an altar. I have a hape station. Hape is one of my absolute favorite medicines to work with. It's legal. It's just sacred tobacco. And it is one of the most grounding, 15-minute experiences that can really put you in your body. And it's a prayer medicine. So indigenous tribes use it for prayer. It's really easy to get clear. It's almost like, the way I feel about it is like a funnel, and all the information from this upper chakra area that's just very like, it's kind of squeezes all the way down to your root chakra, to where there's one kind of really true truth. And when you know what that is, now you feel grounded. Oh, now I know how to move forward because I know the thing that matters the most. So having allies around you, that's crystals that remind you of that. My vision board is one of them. Inside of my altar space is my vision board. My vision board has everything on it that I said I wanted to do and who I was when I was in truth and when I felt safe and I was not afraid.
Beautiful.
That vision board, I come home to it every day. It has components of my relationship, my business, travel, my family, finances, all of that on that board. And every single day, when I just take the time to sit in front of it, I am reminded of who I said I was when I was in truth. I have books that do this for me. So I have books on my altar. I burn smells and scents that are very familiar to me that remind me of moments in my life where I felt love and abundance. So having components in a space around you, things and objects that bring you home to yourself when you connect with them, that is energy. And that is really important. For some people, that's nature. If you know what that is, if right off the top of your head, you're like, oh, that's a blanket that I've had since I was a kid. Great, you have one object. If that's lighting a candle and staring at a flame, great, you have one object. Collect those objects, put them in a space where the only thing you do in that space is come home to yourself. That's what my meditation room is. Everyone that enters that room, they can feel it. People don't go in there and giggle or mess around. It's like, even my partner's kind of afraid of the room a little bit because he can feel the intensity of that room and that room represents truth. And any ounce of truth that he is not in, when he steps into that room, it's so loud. And same for me. When I step into that room and I'm afraid, I look at those things and it tells me, this is how far you are from your truth. So I sit in that room for as long as I need to. I do breath work, I do hape, I cry, whatever it takes for me to come home to myself and to the idea and the concept of and the philosophies of what these objects remind me of.
Wow, that's so amazing. That is definitely a ritual. And I think that's beautiful, even just to do the practice of writing down, journaling, what makes you feel most connected to yourself. Like for myself, I love the sunshine. I love nature, as you mentioned. Like I just feel like just so at ease, so at peace, and so connected to myself. So that's good just to recognize what that is. I think that's important. I love that. And you mentioned Fit for Service, which I've been so curious about. I follow Fit for Service, Aubrey Marcus, all that, all the great people in the world. And Fit for Service, you mentioned that really changed your life. And was it because the relationships you developed or because of certain practices that were done in this mastermind? What was the biggest change in that? Being of service, whatever it may be, what do you feel is the most impactful thing you learned in it?
Yeah, some of the rituals that they're teaching and the philosophies, they're incredible. For me, I needed the people. I needed community. I needed to hear another person's truth so that I could feel safe to be in my truth. Community is everything. I really feel like it's so much. That's what we came here for, was to deeply connect to others. And the only way that we can truly connect to others in truth is to be able to connect to ourselves in truth. So the community aspect of it absolutely changed my life. It's why I'm so big on community. I'm growing my community right now. And I would honestly suggest, especially if you're somebody who you don't have a lot of friends, you feel a little bit like a lone wolf, and that's okay. And, check yourself. If you deeply identify as a lone wolf, there's probably some healing work that needs to be done around that idea so that you can get to a place of neutrality. And if you're a lone wolf, go try to be with community so that you can then truly choose to be a lone wolf rather than just being like, this is what it is, but allowing yourself to experience other people and the mirror work. Listen to other people's stories. Listen to them because they have language waiting for you. We have pieces, we have keys for everyone, and other people have keys for us. You will meet someone, they will say one thing to you, and it will unlock something inside of you that will change the direction of your path forever. And it will set more alignment for you. And when you find a couple of those people, you unlock so much inside yourself. You ultimately realize that is the game that we are playing here. Find the people that you connect with, the people that make you feel safe, the people that make you feel grounded, the people that you feel you can be in truth with, and pour into those relationships so long as it doesn't make you leave your center, and be that for other people. And when you do that, like you've accessed the thing. You have everything that you really came here that you're desiring and wanting. And that's going to really change the depression and the anxiety and the fact that more people die from loneliness than they do from any other disease.
Yeah. And actually, I love that you said that was the one thing that really was so powerful for you is connecting with the community, especially because you mentioned you had a hard time connecting with other females and but also what you mentioned is that in those we connect with, there'll be something that they say that could give us an aha moment, like the awakening we needed per se. And so I think that's just so beautiful that that was available for you, and it's available for others that obviously could look into that, and I'll include it in the show notes. So just in closure, this has been phenomenal. We could go on and on. I know, because there's so much, there's so much to learn about self-healing, because unfortunately and fortunately, in some regard, like I really believe life is meant to teach us a lot of lessons, and it's for us to grow, to become our highest self, and to be able to serve from a full cup and everything. So I do believe, like, no matter what, some of us have been through the big T trauma and then little T trauma, but it's all meant to serve us in some way, or if we allow it to, it could serve us to become a better version of ourselves. And I know you've been through a lot, and I think it's beautiful that you have been able to rise above it, right? And I think that what you are trying to serve onto others and help them heal from their trauma, whatever it may be, is so beautiful. And so I'm so appreciative for the work you do, honestly. And you come from such an authentic place. It's just beautiful. And you have a big heart that just shines over your head, literally. And so in closure, I just want to ask, so what's new and exciting coming? Because I know there are some things I've heard you mention in your feed, and if you could share some of those things that people could possibly join you on.
Yeah. So right now I am preparing to go into Sedona for a women's retreat.
Me too.
And you are? Oh, amazing. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a retreat with a couple of my favorite women that have been mirrors for me on my journey to what I call becoming like a modern day medicine woman. I feel so deeply the power and the medicine that each one of us has to offer the world. And so I felt very called to put together something called Awaken the Medicine Woman. And there's a couple of women, one of them being Ashley Klein, who I met. She's Parangi's wife, and he's one of my favorite musicians. Is incredible. I've done ecstatic dance with him. Violana Marcus, which is my mentor, Aubrey Marcus's wife. She's an incredible medicine woman. And then I'm also bringing on a sexual embodiment coach. Her name is Hannah. And the purpose of this retreat is really to bring women to the understanding of just how vast they really are, and they exist the entire world all inside of them, and that their unique medicine is just their truth, and giving them modalities to access what that truth really is, and to feel grounded and to stand in that, regardless of what the world, how the world interprets it. That retreat is sold out, and we'll be doing a virtual experience. One of the things I want to do virtually this year is, I started doing retreats when I had no fucking clue what I was doing. And I want to encourage other people, because I know how important community is, that even if you don't know yet what philosophy you're going to teach, or if you don't yet know, how to put a retreat together, you don't have the finances to go ahead and get that. I want to offer the structure and the philosophy for people to host their own experiences, even if that's just inside of their own home. And I would be providing the structure of the retreat, the workshops, all of the facilitators. It would be a virtual experience. And you, as a woman that feels called, or as a man, as we do these as well for the Awaken Your Medicine Man, you would be allowed to really invite people into your space, into a space that you're facilitating and holding, and really have that experience of what it feels like to be a facilitator of space holding, a facilitator of learning in that space. And so I have a lot of retreats that will be coming out over the next couple of years. I don't plan anything out more than 3 months in advance, because I'm very much a creator. I'm an artist, and I like to do what I'm passionate about. And then my mastermind, my self-healer mastermind, will not open again until January of 2022. Okay. But that will be another beautiful experience for those looking to get into the mastermind, as well as other healers who are just looking for that extra edge and their extra language and truth that they have to serve. So those are some things that I have coming up, as well as connecting with me. So yeah, I offer, for people who are like, whoa, retreat, like that's a lot of commitments. I offer a 60 to 90 minute inner child assessment for anybody that wants to do that through Instagram. You just go on, you book it. We do an hour session where we look at your current patterns that you're living in, and like the pain points and the loops of self-sabotage or codependency, whatever it is that you're saying, like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I help you track back to where that pattern has been reoccurring, and then help you provide boundaries for yourself so that you can get out of those loops, really reprogram whatever it is that's keeping you in the loop, and then just move forward. So that's also an offering that I have.
And that's such important work. That is so great. And so the virtual retreat that you're going to be doing, is that something that will be coming up soon that I could include in the show notes?
Yes, that's going to come up this summer. We're about to pick the dates for it. And so as soon as I have that, I will send that over to you.
Perfect. Well, it sounds so exciting. So where could people most find you?
Instagram. That's the easiest place for me. And then my website is thealpasproject.com. Alpas is ALPAS, and it just means becoming free.
I love it. I love it. So much goodness. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Adrian, for your time and your vulnerability, your authenticity. I love it. And I appreciate you deeply.
Yes, thank you so much.